Getting some weird looks from the audience. A few people are looking at me like, oh, this kid, he thinks he's going to teach us something from all the wealth of his experience. How cute. Well, yes, I am cute. Glad we got that established. Now, the way to master any skill, trade, or art form quickly and effectively can be summed up with an acronym. This is public speaking after all. It's pronounced BUS. Be special. That's right, if you want to learn anything quickly and effectively, you just have to be gifted. And, we all know what that means, right? I don't have to spell it out for you or define. Oh, yeah, I do. Okay. A gift is that intangible thing that lets those obnoxiously humble people do amazing work with half the work and effort that we put in. It doesn't make sense because they didn't work for it. There's nothing special that they did in order to get it. They just receive it. It's a gift. And it allows them to learn and do things really, really well. So if we could have a gift like they did, we could learn anything we want. Because, if they can receive it, why can't we? And that's what we're going to explore today. Where do gifts come from? And can we get them for ourselves? But in exploring something like this, how do you even start to approach it? Well, you'd approach it in the same way you did when you were young and you didn't know how to find things. Like, say you wanted to know where babies come from. Well, the obvious answer is to go to Ned, that weird kid that your parents don't approve of but seems to know a lot of really neat stuff. Well, I hope your parents wouldn't approve of me, and I think I might know some neat stuff. So let's explore this. Also, I was born with a gift, and I know, just from experience, that it's not something I deserve or something I worked for, it's just something I have. Let me show you some examples. Here's a sketch I made, a design for an album cover of someone. This is my first time using watercolor. Here's a design I made online for a skateboard company, and they actually adopted it as their company logo. It was my second or third time working with digital art. I got one of those clicky 10-color pens from the Dollar Tree, and I drew this up in an afternoon. That was fun. Here's my first time doing chalk art. It took me a few hours. This is my second time making a sculpture. Sculpture translates from drawing, right? Because if you can understand it in your mind, you should be able to put it out. Once again, no pictures, no nothing, just purely from imagination. About my 10th time doing sand sculptures. Those are a lot harder. And here is me pretending that I don't notice there's a camera on me. So the reason I chose all these examples is that I know I'm not a master yet, and I know that I have a long, long way to go, more to learn than I even realize. But for someone who's only their first or second time using these artistic mediums, this is some pretty decent work. And we want to be decent ourselves, right? And we're going to need a gift, because unless we've got 10,000 hours to spare, that rule, we're going to have to find a gift if we're going to want to learn these skills. So let's try to trace back through my life, figure out where this gift come from. Let's start at the very beginning. I hear it's a very good place to start. Yeah, I couldn't draw at this age. To be honest, as babies, nobody can do anything except pooping. And to be honest, even then, we still need a lot of encouragement, potty stickers, and maybe even a few M&Ms to get us to do it right. How about age 6, for those of you who can't do the math? Now, here we may have something, because I went to my parents with a drawing I had made for them, and they were blown away. They had never put me in art classes. I wasn't even in school yet. And because they have never seen an arachnid rendered with such accuracy and detail. They were just telling me, that's amazing. I don't know how you did that. That's so good. And me, I was just happy that my mom liked her portrait. Yeah, not a lot of people can do things at age 6 either, except maybe Mozart and a few other people, but that's more like brilliant as opposed to gifted. So when I was 14, all of this encouragement and praise had gone to my head. Still hasn't left. And because of that, I had this false illusion that I was amazing. I still do. But because of this, I wanted to be put in art classes. And my parents, because of some unfulfilled childhood dream, wanted to put me in them as well. So as I transited between homeschool and high school and public school and traveling and studying both in America and abroad, I was put in every art class that was available, multiple years. So for the next 5 years and over 9 different multi-year art courses, I studied and used every moment available, training and using all of the different techniques and drills they gave us. And now this makes sense to you guys, right? This is the answer you're expecting. Okay, a gift is just being born in the right place with the right amount of time with the right education, right? You're born able to take these classes, you're able to get these instructions, you have enough time to practice, which of course none of us do have. But there was a strange trend within all of these classes. First of all, they would all have us do very similar drills. They would all have us grid, which is where you look at a drawing or a picture, you make a grid, and then you look in just that square and try to figure out what lines and shapes are there and copy it down. And the idea here with all these different drills was for us to sort of see things and isolate them in our mind, not look at it as a person or a face, look at it as a flat drawing. That way we'd be able to draw it better for ourselves. They'd have us look for the simple lines and curves and shape that made it up. In fact, they'd even go so far as to have us turn it upside down so we couldn't even recognize it, and just not see this as a picture, see this as a flat thing. And or even see how other artists did it. And I practiced and I trained and I worked at all of these basic rules that they gave us. And by the end of 5 years in all of these art classes, I was almost as good at this process as a standard office industrial copy machine. But, honestly, what good is this for except impressing parents and making them think they got their money's worth for putting me in this class? Yeah, not much. See, I'm not saying all art classes are bad per se, but for the majority of art classes, at least maybe just in the younger grades, their goal is to produce nice art, not nice artists. You're doing really nice work right here on the page, but no work is happening up here. And gifts are in the mind. Gifts are in the learning. So I was 14 when I realized this, and this was really rough for me. I was 14, I had wasted the best years of my life practicing drawing photographs and drawing stick figures. I had far exceeded the 10,000 hour rule. But it turns out that you can spend 5 years drawing stick figures, and it's not going to turn into a Da Vinci. It may turn into a Picasso, but not really what we're going for here. So it was at that moment that I realized that I was deficient. I had nothing I could do, no classes I could put myself in, or no amount of hard work. Didn't matter how much I wanted or believed in myself. I was never going to be able to learn to draw. I needed a gift, something outside of myself that I couldn't work for or deserve. So I asked for one. And this time, I asked the masters. Now, perhaps many of you guys don't want to be artistic masters, but I hope that all of you would at least like to be competent at drawing. So let's look at some really, really competent people. I'm talking Michelangelo, Diego Velázquez, Leonardo da Vinci, Claude Monet, Steve Kuenha. I made that last one up. Let's ask these people, see their advice, read their sketchbook pages, see what they said, what did they practice, and what did they recommend us to do, because maybe the gift is there. And when I did that, I found some very strange themes. So here we have an example of the masters and experts in a field giving the exact opposite advice as the common people. When in life does that happen? So that's when I realized something. There was something going on here. There was something beyond. And that's when I realized that learning isn't something that happens with your work. Learning happens up here. And as a teenager, I realized that you can have the best teacher in the world in front of me. And half the time, because I don't want to learn, it's not going to get in there. So having a gift is not about having the right things or working at the right things. It's about taking the world and condensing it and sticking it into your mind, finding a way to fit the laws of the universe into your mind. And that is what these artists were doing. Because what the main flow in all these advices is what they were trying to say is, don't see this as a picture. See this as a 3D object. See this as something real. Because it existed as reality in their mind. And they wouldn't approach drawing as a canvas. They would approach it as a deep thing that they would carve into like a sculptor. But how do you do this in practice? Well, you got to start with the fundamentals. So let's start with some fundamentals that all of us know. Hopefully we all know how to draw a square, a circle, and if we're especially gifted, a house. Now, all of these are right. If you look at a square from the front, a cube, 3D cube, it's going to look like that. If you look at a circle from the side, just the contour is going to look like that. And even a house, if it's minimalistic enough, will look like this. But what happens if we turn them? Suddenly everything changes. We have these contours and these rules of perspective that makes things shift and change. And in fact, there's an infinite number of ways we can change. So we have two approaches to learning how to draw these things. Either we can do in art classes, which is where you learn how to draw a side view, a 3/4 view, and a frontal view. Or you can simply learn what these things are, fit them into your mind, and sort of train yourself to draw them. So that's what the masters did. They would take these shapes and they would draw them and make them and practice moving around to the page, building this intuitive ability so that any shape that they could see in their mind, they could draw down. Because it's easy to understand these things. And when you can understand to draw these simple shapes, things like shading or gesture become so much easier because they're intuitive, right? We all know that when you shine a light at something, the side facing the light is going to be bright, and the other side is going to be shadowy. So either we could memorize this like in an art class, or we could simply memorize this as an object in our mind, and these things would all be so intuitive. And the fact is that everything on Earth is made of these basic shapes. If we look at a room, why, it's simply made of a giant box. Doorways are boxes. A table is just a box with smaller boxes. A bowl is just half a circle. And if we memorize these basic shapes, we can draw these other different things. But what about something like people? I mean, people are made of some really complex shapes. Not really. We can simplify the human form into a little bit more complicated version of these basic shapes using a lot of cylinders. Anyone can draw a cylinder. But this idea of taking the basic things and then altering them a little bit is where the magic happens. See, when you're learning human anatomy, what you're doing is you're memorizing more complex versions of shapes. You learn about the shoulder muscle, and you learn that it's shaped sort of like a heart. And then you learn that there's like 7 heads in it. And then you learn about the idiosyncrasies of each of those muscular heads. And then you got a much deeper, richer understanding that was built on a foundation on a foundation. Here's a simplification, learning the muscles and fat pads of the back. The whole thing can be simplified to a teardrop, but as you learn more and more, then your shape is going to get a lot more complicated, a lot more rich. So, overall, what this means for us is that a gift, overall, not just in drawing, isn't inborn talent, because nobody has that. It's not hard work, and it's not teaching or instruction. It's revelation into how to conceptualize the fundamentals, how to understand the way the world works. It's how to take those complex laws, things like cubes, circles, and spheres that everything is made of, and fit them into your mind. And the fact is that this builds an area of intelligence in your mind called spatiotemporal intelligence. It's the kind of thing that would allow an artist to see this picture of a brain cell a few nanometers across in a dark matter cluster thousands of light years across, and he would immediately know, oh, I see exactly what's going on, why they look so similar. And what this suggests also is that nature itself, just like rooms made of boxes, is also itself made of the same sorts of things. But these fundamentals are a little bit more advanced. They're made of division processes, the golden ratio, and the number 137.4 something something. And more advanced artists will have to learn these. But once you do learn these things, you could draw any of these things quite simply from your mind using the number 8 and 15 versions of the golden ratio at equal divisions spaced out. And so learning these fundamentals is just about building upon each other, building upon each other. Here's an example. Say we want to draw a tree, something complex from nature. Well, nature is really about self-similarity. So if we see this stem and 2 branches, the next branches are going to be exactly the same, just a little bit smaller. And the branches of those are going to be a little bit smaller, going out and out, maybe about to the 12 or 13, depending on what tree. But let's look a little bit more complicated. Say we have this, right? The branches are a little bit different. And we continue that same ratio, the angle of the branches being the same, dividing, getting smaller and smaller. And maybe if we want to draw foliage, we can sort of get an idea just putting out basic things. But I left it simplistic like this, because if this at all reminds you of a cross-section of half of the brain, or maybe a sky view of the Himalayas, or maybe the Niger River Delta, or a crack, that's because all of these things follow these same laws. And once you learn the fundamentals, you can draw and create any of them. So, how does this work in practice, right? Something besides drawing. If we wanted to learn something, how would we take this idea of getting a gift and learn it? Well, let's take an example of cooking, because a lot of people want to learn to cook. But unfortunately, the approach that many people take is the approach of machine learning. If you have a machine, you can't outright teach it, it's hard. So what you do is you give it thousands of pictures, and it looks and tries to find patterns. And eventually it gets good at that. So that's what people try to do with cooking. See, what they do is they try to make recipes and they try to cook things, and over the years, after many successes and failures, they start to get some basic patterns of how things work and how they don't work. But what if there was an easier way? What if we could get a gift? And that gift is available to us on the internet. What if we were to simply learn how these ingredients work? Take eggs. How can we alter its structure? How does it interact with other things? And now, after learning those basic things, we could make a recipe without ever having followed a recipe, and it might succeed. Or if we did try following a couple of recipes, we would start noticing patterns more effectively. And we would start learning things a lot deeper and understand them better. So now think about this. You could learn any one of these skills that you've ever wanted to learn, right? Maybe it's playing an instrument, maybe it's something at work, things you felt like you couldn't do. Now you can learn them if you just learn the fundamentals, which is easy, right? No. To be honest, half the time of me studying how to learn to draw was learning how to learn to draw. I had to figure out, what are the masters doing? What are these fundamentals, which are not always easy to understand because you got to learn the fundamentals of the fundamentals of the fundamentals. And unless you build on them right, it's not going to work. Some classes are helpful. Now, the way to tell if a class is helpful or not is to follow a very simple acronym. I call it RULE. Are you learning anything? Clearly, I haven't learned how to use acronyms yet, but I'm working on it. If you find that you're producing really nice work down here, but no work is happening up here, if you feel like you can draw something with copying, but not without, well, then there's a problem going on. There's a quote by a famous artist that said, you shouldn't draw something by copying until you can draw it without copying, because otherwise you're not going to learn anything from the copying. So, if you follow this rule, if you struggle, if you try to find the fundamentals instead of simply copying or doing what's easy, things are going to turn out great. I mean, let's imagine if you were at age 60 and you wanted to learn carpentry in a month so you can make an epic dollhouse for your grandchildren, right? And then you make this, you learn, you study, and you make this thing. And people are just blown away, right? They come and they're like, it's so cute, it's amazing, it's so good. And then they look at you and they say, you must be gifted. And now you're going to look at them. And you're going to think back into all that time it took studying and trying to find the fundamentals, practicing them, putting them to practice, fitting these complex laws and fitting them into your mind. And you're going to look at them and you're going to say, yes, I am. Cute. Thank you very much.